Every year, the Palestinian Authority receives hundreds of millions of dollars from America, also from Israel and the European Union. For the past 4 years, no one exactly knows how that money is being spent.
Palestinian leaders will not release the information. The reason, millions of dollars is likely being used to fund terrorism. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem on a watchdog group demanding answers.
Over the last few years, the Palestinian Authority has changed its financial reporting, and a leading watchdog group wants to know what it's trying to hide.
It used to publish, albeit limited, financial reportings on a monthly basis and an annual basis, but slowly but surely they've been cutting back the amount of publications that they put out.
After researching the issue, Maurice Hirsch of the Palestinian Media Watch found the PA hasn't published its annual budget in 4 years.
That means that no one really knows how the Palestinian Authority plans to use their money that they have coming in every year, international donor money, Israeli money that's coming in as a result of the Oslo Accords, and even their own money. Almost every country in the world publishes a budget. The Palestinian Authority, which is so dependent on international aid, doesn't publish its budget.
Hirsch says even published accounting information of what had been spent is now missing.
When you go onto the website of the Palestinian Ministry of Finance, there is no access to any financial details whatsoever.
CBN News repeatedly attempted to contact the Palestinian Authority, but was unable to get a response. Since its beginning in 1994, the international community has basically funded the Palestinian Authority. More than half of that money comes from Israel, mostly taxes collected from Palestinians working in the country. While the PA collects domestic taxes, the rest of its funding comes from the European Union and the United States.
The reason really that they're trying to hide their finances is that Palestinian Media Watch has repeatedly used the reports that they do publish in order to highlight the fact that they pay hundreds of millions of dollars in rewards to terrorists every single year.
That's why Congress passed the Taylor Force Act in 2018. Taylor Force was a U.S. military veteran murdered in a terror attack in Israel. His murderer was killed in the attack, and so his family receives a stipend because he was a terrorist. The Taylor Force Act doesn't allow the U.S. to give direct economic aid to the PA unless it stops paying stipends to terrorists and the families of dead terrorists.
There's just the aid which is going indirectly via U.S. aid for the benefit of the Palestinians.
USAID and the United Nations Relief Works Agency funding goes to infrastructure projects, to schools and health clinics for the people. But that frees up other monies in the PA budget that could be used to pay terrorists.
What we've also shown is that the PA has been siphoning off almost $1 billion shekel, hundreds of millions of dollars every year, at least for the last 3 years, to what they call the PLO institutions.
Hirsch says there's plenty the West can do to hold the Palestinian Authority accountable. He also says transferring money to institutions belonging to the PLO should be prohibited. He says these are elementary requirements that should be implemented quickly.
Rewarding terrorism does not promote peace. Siphoning off billions of dollars in order for these PLO institutions to, again, directly or indirectly finance, fund, promote terrorism does not promote peace.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, this obviously doesn't promote peace. What it does promote is incitement, and we've seen that just in the past few days, where a leader of Hamas in Gaza tells Palestinians to get their guns ready, to sharpen their axes and their knives. And in response, there's an axe attack, a murder of 3 fathers on the streets of Israel. All because of this, all because of an ideology of hatred. When you look at it, you just shake your head and go, how can you train your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren in this kind of hatred, where you turn them into murderers? And then when they become murderers, you reward them financially and you reward their families. It absolutely makes no sense. That's why our U.S. Congress passed the Taylor Force Act. Now it's up to our current administration to enforce it, to say, no, we're not going to fund terrorism. We're not going to fund the murder of Israelis. This has to stop. And I hope they have the backbone to do it. So far, they haven't shown that. They've put back into place things that under the Trump administration, funding for UNRWA, funding for the Palestinian Authority was withdrawn in accordance with the Taylor Force Act. But they've restored that. They've even said we want to put a consulate for the Palestinian Authority right in the heart of Jerusalem. Israel said, no, you're not going to do that in our capital city. So if you want to put a consulate into Ramallah, go ahead, but not here on our land. You're not going to do that. So this is one where you look at our policies and say, do our policies really intend to bring peace to the region, or do they intend to bring incitement and further terrorism? That's a question I think the administration needs to be asked repeatedly, because our tax dollars, are funding this.